Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the most famous and most unexpected stories in Greek mythology. Picture yourself in ancient Greece. The air smells of salt and smoke. The sound of clashing armor echoes over the waves, and the ground is heavy with the weight of history. You probably won't survive this journey. No one really does when gods are involved. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear where you're from and what time it is there, so drop your location in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Trojan War is where we begin. It all starts with the city of Troy, which stands on a rocky hill by the Aegean Sea. Its towering walls and gates seem almost invincible, and for 10 long years, the Greeks have been trying, without success, to break through them. The siege of Troy isn't a quick, brutal campaign. It's a slow, grinding struggle. Imagine yourself standing on the battlefield as you watch the Greek army set up camp year after year, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Trojans, too, are weary but confident in their fortifications. You can almost hear the tension, the heaviness in the air, as both sides grow more and more impatient. You'd think after such a long siege, everyone would be ready to call it quits. But no, they keep going. The Greeks keep trying to break the walls, while the Trojans defend with relentless pride. It's the kind of war where neither side really wants to lose, but both sides are stuck in this endless cycle. And this is where we start tonight, right in the thick of the action, where every move, every whisper in the night, could change the fate of an entire civilization. Now, you might be thinking, what on earth has been going on for so long? The truth is, the war isn't just about swords and shields, it's about gods. Yes, the ancient Greek gods are never far away, and they play a pivotal role in this saga. You see, the gods meddle in mortal affairs constantly, influencing the course of human events for their own amusement, or perhaps to settle personal grudges. Some gods favor the Greeks, while others take the Trojan side. The gods aren't passive observers, like spectators in a theater. No, they're active participants, involved in every battle, every decision, even every moment of weakness. Picture it. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, standing beside Paris, whispering words of encouragement. Meanwhile, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, is strategizing for the Greeks. And then, of course, there's Zeus, the king of the gods, who's always making decisions that change the course of events with a simple nod. These gods aren't content to just watch. They're pulling the strings, pushing the players into their next move like a divine game of chess. It's no wonder that, with such powerful beings influencing every action, things aren't exactly simple. And, naturally, this divine intervention complicates matters for the mortals involved. Historians still argue whether the gods were simply used to explain the inexplicable, or whether the ancient Greeks truly believed their deities had such a powerful role in shaping the events of their lives. Perhaps it's a bit of both. The gods certainly made sure to keep the human players on their toes. And while you might think, well, surely the mortals should have been in control, that's not how things worked back then. No one could stand against the gods and expect to succeed. Their interference was inevitable as the tides that crash against the walls of Troy. But let's focus on the Greek side for a moment, where a plan is forming, a plan that will change everything. You might be familiar with the great heroes of the Greek army: Achilles, the nearly invincible warrior, and Odysseus, the king of Ithaca known for his wisdom and cunning. Achilles is a force of nature, fierce, unstoppable, but also deeply flawed. His anger and pride are both his strengths and his weaknesses. But in this tale, it's not Achilles who comes up with the game-changing idea. No, this time it's Odysseus, and he's not interested in charging the walls of Troy head-on. He's far too clever for that. Odysseus is thinking about the long game. What if, instead of attacking with swords and shields, they attacked with something the Trojans could never anticipate? Imagine sitting beside Odysseus, the warm Mediterranean breeze ruffling your hair as he discusses the idea. He's calm, almost too calm, as he speaks about this gift they could offer Troy, something the Trojans would be thrilled to accept. It would be a massive wooden horse, large enough to hold several men inside, and to the Trojans, it would look like a token of peace, a symbol of the end of the war. Odysseus is patient as he explains, his voice low and steady. The Trojans, tired of the endless fighting, would surely think the Greeks had given up and gone home, leaving behind this strange gift. But inside, hiding in the belly of the horse, would be Greek soldiers ready to strike when the time was right. It's audacious, brilliant, and more than a little risky. The Greek soldiers, all strong and resourceful, start to gather materials, their hands steady as they begin to construct the horse. Can you picture it? The steady rhythm of their axes, the sound of the wood creaking as the frame of the horse takes shape. They work under the cover of night, hoping the Trojans don't notice. The plan is simple, but the stakes are high. If the Trojans figure it out, the Greeks will be in trouble. But if it works, Troy will fall. The weight of this moment hangs over the Greeks like the sword of Damocles. Historians still argue about whether the Trojan horse was truly a literal wooden structure or if it was a metaphor for a clever ruse. Some suggest it was a wooden tower or a siege engine disguised as a gift. Regardless of its form, the horse represents the brilliance of Odysseus. The Greeks aren't fighting for a quick victory. They're playing a much more subtle game, and it's a game that could shift the course of history. But before the Trojans can even begin to think about it, the Greek soldiers must finish their masterpiece. And that's where we leave them for now, in the middle of their covert construction. Tomorrow, or maybe the night after, the horse will be finished. And then, the fate of Troy will hang on the judgment of the Trojans. As the sun rises over the Greek camp, a sense of anticipation fills the air. The construction of the Trojan horse is progressing steadily. Woodworkers and laborers, some of them veterans of the war, are putting their all into the task. The city of Troy looms in the distance, massive and impenetrable. The Trojans must be feeling safe within their high walls, perhaps even complacent after so many years of fighting. But little do they know, the Greeks are about to pull off something so daring that it will bring their city to its knees. What's even more interesting here is how this massive wooden horse isn't just a simple structure. It's not merely a trick. This horse represents the essence of Greek warfare: ingenuity, patience, and relentless persistence. It's a perfect reflection of Odysseus' character. He's a thinker, not just a fighter. And in a war where brute force has failed time and again, it's his cunning that will tip the scales. But you know what's funny? If you could ask any of the Greek soldiers involved in this plot, most would probably tell you that it's a bit insane. They're about to hide inside a giant wooden horse, and then they'll wait for nightfall and hope the Trojans don't notice anything unusual. As ridiculous as it sounds, it just might work. You might wonder if anyone on the Greek side doubted the plan. Surely, some had misgivings about hiding inside a massive wooden horse and relying on the Trojans to just roll it inside their city walls. Could this really be the moment that ends the war? Well, historians still argue about the exact logistics of how the Greeks got the horse to Troy in the first place. Some suggest that the Greeks might have used smaller teams to covertly roll the horse through the gates under cover of darkness. Others believe it was all part of a larger strategic plan. What we do know for sure is that this idea came from the mind of Odysseus, a man who was never afraid to push the boundaries of what's possible. And of course, the Trojans. Oh, the Trojans. They've been under siege for nearly a decade, and finally, they think the Greeks have given up. The Trojans see the horse as a token of peace. After all, the Greeks have apparently sailed away, leaving this curious gift behind. Imagine the scene. The Trojans are tired, they're hungry, they're emotionally drained. And now, here's this giant wooden structure standing proudly before them. It's an unusual sight, but they are willing to entertain the idea of a gift from the Greeks. Perhaps it's a sign that the gods are intervening on their behalf. But there's something strange about the situation. There's an uneasy quiet around the Trojan camp. Even though the horse seems like an offering of goodwill, some Trojans, like the noble priest Laocoon, are suspicious. He famously warns the Trojans against bringing the horse into the city, crying out, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." His warning is heartfelt, but in the end, it falls on deaf ears. The Trojans, eager to believe in their victory, dismiss him. And of course, we're all familiar with the tragic fate that follows. But imagine being in their shoes for a moment. You've just endured 10 years of siege. You want peace. You want the war to be over. Wouldn't you want to believe that this mysterious gift is a sign of just that? This moment, when the Trojan leaders make the fateful decision to bring the horse into their city, is a perfect illustration of human nature. You've seen it before, right? That moment when we all want to believe in the best outcome, so much so that we ignore the little red flags. Sometimes, the desire for peace and resolution can cloud our judgment. Historians still debate whether the Trojans were simply naive or if they were so exhausted by the war that they were desperate to believe anything. So, the horse is brought into the heart of Troy, and the Trojans celebrate their supposed victory. But as night falls, the Greeks inside the horse are still waiting, still quiet as mice, counting the seconds. Every minute feels like an eternity, but they hold their ground. No one knows exactly what went through their minds in that moment, but you can imagine the tension. These men, brave and battle-hardened, have been in wars before, but this is something different. They're relying on the Trojans' naivety. If the plan succeeds, they'll be in Troy, deep within the city, ready to strike. If it fails, well, their fate is sealed. The weight of this decision presses on them, but they have no choice but to trust in the brilliance of Odysseus' plan. For the Trojans, however, the night is full of celebration and feasting. The city is alive with excitement. They've finally defeated their enemies, or so they believe. The horse is admired, touched, and marveled at as a symbol of the war's end. It's almost poetic, really, isn't it? That something so simple, a horse, could hold the key to the fall of an entire civilization. As the Trojans prepare for bed, lulled by the sounds of a peaceful night, the Greeks are preparing for their greatest act of treachery. Historians still argue whether the Trojans could have noticed anything strange, whether the Greeks gave away any hint that their plan was afoot. Some say the Trojans were too tired, too eager to believe in their victory. Others claim it was the gods themselves who ensured the Trojans' blindness to the danger that lay ahead. And so, as the night deepens, the Trojan horse stands silently in the middle of the city, awaiting its purpose. The Greeks inside are as still as the night itself, listening to the muffled sounds of the city around them. Every minute feels like an eternity as they wait for the signal to begin their attack. The fate of Troy, of Greece, and of these great warriors all hangs in the balance. The night wears on. The Trojans, lulled by the warm embrace of victory, are none the wiser. The streets of Troy are alive with the sounds of laughter and celebration, the clinking of cups, and the soft strumming of lyres. The Trojans feel invincible. After 10 long years of war, they've finally won. They believe the Greeks have sailed off into the horizon, retreating from their city in defeat. They've even brought the mysterious horse inside, fully convinced it's a symbol of the Greek surrender. Little do they know, the Greeks have only begun their attack, and it will come when they least expect it. Meanwhile, inside the wooden horse, the Greek soldiers lie in wait. Silence reigns. The faintest sounds of the city's festivities leak through the gaps in the wood. There's a strange stillness in the air as each soldier silently prays for the plan to succeed. They are tense, knowing that once they begin their mission, there will be no turning back. But they trust in Odysseus' genius. After all, this is the same man who devised the plan for the Trojan horse, and who managed to outwit the gods themselves on many occasions. Odysseus' mind is always 5 steps ahead, and if anyone can pull this off, it's him. Still, the pressure is immense. How much longer can they stay hidden? How much longer until they have to act? Historians still argue over what happens next, whether it was pure luck, divine intervention, or a well-timed stroke of genius that allowed the Greeks to succeed. But one thing's for certain. It's the perfect storm of timing, cunning, and, of course, a bit of trickery. As the Trojans continue their celebrations, The Greek soldiers inside the horse grow increasingly anxious. They wait for the signal, knowing that it will come soon. But as the hours drag on, some start to wonder if the Trojans are just too clever for them. Maybe they'll figure out the ruse. Maybe they'll notice the subtle shift in the air. But no. The Trojans are too caught up in their own victory, too sure of their triumph. Then, just as the Trojans begin to wind down their celebrations, the signal finally comes. A quiet whistle, a gentle tap on the side of the horse. It's time. The soldiers within the horse begin to move. It's so quiet at first that you can almost miss it. They slide out of their hiding spots, careful not to make a sound. But it's impossible to stay entirely silent when there are so many men involved. The first creaks and groans of the wooden horse are barely audible, but to the Greeks inside, it's like a symphony of fate. They're finally emerging from their prison, ready to turn the tide of the war. Historians still debate exactly how the Greek soldiers managed to get out so quietly, but most agree that their success depends on their stealth. They move with precision, the only sounds being the lightest shuffle of armor, the faintest brush of tunics against wood. Their senses are sharp as they slip out one by one, emerging into the moonlit streets of Troy. The city is eerily quiet now, its inhabitants drunk on their perceived victory, unaware that death is creeping through their gates. The Greeks quickly regroup, forming a line under the cover of darkness. Their task is clear: take the city. The first step is to open the gates of Troy, and they need help with that. Luckily, they've planned for this. Outside the city, a small contingent of Greek soldiers, those who had been pretending to leave Troy, sailing off in their ships, are waiting. The signal to them comes quickly. The gates are open, and it's time for them to return. You can almost feel the tension mounting as the Greek soldiers begin to infiltrate the city. The gates are opened silently, one by one, as the Greek soldiers slip inside. The Trojans, still sleeping or celebrating, are blissfully unaware that their city has been infiltrated from within. The first few Greeks move like shadows, crossing through the streets with the stealth of ghosts. They make their way to the heart of Troy, toward the citadel, toward the royal palace, where the Trojan king, Priam, rests with his family. But it's not just about the Greeks silently slipping through the gates. They're not just waiting for the right moment to strike. They're also counting on the Trojan leadership being too tired or too blinded by their own celebrations to mount an effective defense. The city is in chaos, but it's the chaos of peace, the illusion of safety. And the Greeks know it. As they move swiftly through the streets, their eyes are locked on their target, Troy's stronghold. Now, let's step back for a moment. The Trojan horse is about to do exactly what it was designed to do. It's not just a gift. It's a Trojan, literally and figuratively, a silent killer wrapped in wood. Imagine the irony of it all. After 10 years of fighting, the Greeks have used their minds instead of their swords to breach the walls of Troy. It's a war-ending move that's clever, deceptive, and, ultimately, devastating. The gods must be watching, no doubt, amused by how such a simple idea, an enormous wooden horse, could spell the downfall of an entire civilization. It's a move that changes the face of warfare forever, and it all begins with the faintest sound from within the horse, followed by the quiet opening of Troy's gates. And so, with the gates now open and the first wave of Greek soldiers flooding into the city, the final act of the Trojan War begins. It's a tragedy of sorts, really. The Trojans, in their moment of greatest triumph, are about to lose everything. The horse wasn't just a gift, it was a death sentence. They're going to pay the price for their belief in peace, for their willingness to trust in the wrong moment. And yet, even in this destruction, there's a dark beauty. For the Greeks, this is victory, but it's not a clean, honorable one. The Trojan horse, a symbol of peace, will go down in history as the ultimate weapon of deception. The Greeks, now inside the gates of Troy, have only one thing on their minds: victory. The silent infiltration has worked like clockwork, and the city of Troy, once so proud and resilient, is now vulnerable. The Trojans, still living under the belief that they are safe, are about to be hit with a shock they could never have imagined. The lights of the city flicker in the night as the first Greek soldiers advance toward their targets, creeping through the narrow, winding streets of the ancient city. It's hard to imagine what the Greek soldiers must feel in that moment. They've spent 10 long years in constant battle, and now, here they are, standing at the heart of their enemy's city. It must be exhilarating, and yet, there's a dark undercurrent to the whole affair. Sure, they've won the war in a way that only a few could have imagined, but how many of them are truly prepared for what happens next? Historians still debate whether the Greek soldiers saw this victory as one of glory or as a tragic, necessary evil. After all, the gods had used them as pawns in this game of war, and now they're the ones who must deal with the consequences of their cunning strategy. As the Greek soldiers fan out through the city, their first objective is clear: take control of the citadel. It's the heart of Troy, the most heavily fortified part of the city, and it's where King Priam and his family are likely to be. The city might have been built with immense pride and incredible engineering, but now it's just a trap. The Trojans never thought they'd be outsmarted. Not like this, not with a trick so simple. The Greeks, led by Odysseus' strategy, have turned their moment of defeat into an unexpected victory. In the distance, you can see the grand citadel rising above the rest of the city, the stronghold where Troy's rulers are likely gathered. It's an imposing structure built to withstand the might of armies for centuries. The Greeks, however, aren't concerned with the walls and gates anymore. They've breached the city, and now they'll take everything. In their minds, this is the price of victory, a price paid in secrecy, deception, and sheer ingenuity. The Trojans are waking up to the chaos they've unwittingly invited. And then it happens. A signal, a quiet call, reverberates through the ranks of the Greek soldiers. It's the signal to begin the assault. As if on cue, the night air is pierced with the sound of Greek soldiers shouting as they move in force. It's a crescendo of destruction, the start of the final act. The Trojans, still unaware of the full scale of what's happening, begin to stir in confusion. Some of them scramble to arm themselves. Others attempt to form a defense, but they're too late. Their walls, so proud and towering, no longer matter. The city has already fallen. The Greeks are inside, and now, it's only a matter of time before the Trojan dream comes crashing down. But before we rush ahead to the ultimate collapse of Troy, it's important to remember just how deeply this moment affects the heroes on both sides. The Greeks, yes, but also the Trojans. It's easy to view this as the final victory of a long war, but there's a deep tragedy in this moment. The Greek soldiers might be cheering as they break into Troy's most sacred spaces, but they're also stepping on the ruins of civilization. The Trojans, innocent or not, are paying the price for their misplaced faith in peace. Let's focus on Priam, the king of Troy, for a moment. He's the heart of the city, the protector of its people, and in the dead of night, as the first Greek soldiers infiltrate his stronghold, he must feel the tremor of something approaching. The sound of clashing weapons in the streets must be deafening. Priam, wise and noble, must have suspected something was wrong when the gates of Troy creaked open under the weight of the Greek horse. But by the time he grasps the full extent of what's happening, it's too late. In his final moments, Priam will experience the heartbreaking agony of losing everything. He's one of the great tragic figures of the ancient world, a king who, despite all his wisdom, cannot save his people from their own destiny. Historians still argue whether Priam knew the end was inevitable or if he had truly believed in the possibility of peace. Either way, he is left with nothing but the ruins of Troy and the destruction of his family. As the Greek soldiers storm the citadel, Odysseus' plan is coming to fruition in the most unexpected and, perhaps, horrific way. The Greeks are taking Troy from the inside out. The once proud walls of the city are no longer a barrier, but a witness to the fall of a great empire. One by one, the Greeks methodically work their way through Troy. They strike fear into the hearts of the Trojans who, until moments ago, had thought themselves victorious. The Greek strategy of deception, of using a giant wooden horse, has broken the back of Troy's defenses. Now the final blow is dealt. Priam, standing as a symbol of the city's once glorious past, faces the reality of his defeat. His fate is sealed, and with him, the fate of Troy. In these final moments, there is no glory, no heroism, only the crushing weight of a city that has failed to recognize its own fragility. The irony is tragic, but it's the nature of the story. Troy's downfall comes not from an open battle, but from the very thing they had trusted: their faith in the gods and their trust in gifts. Historians still debate whether Troy's downfall was inevitable. Did the gods want it to happen, or was it the sheer cleverness of Odysseus that tipped the scales? Some argue that this is a tale of divine justice, while others see it as a story of human folly. Either way, the fall of Troy is a moment in history that echoes across centuries, a cautionary tale about the dangers of trust, the costs of war, and the power of a well-timed deception. And in this moment, as the Greeks strike down their final blow, the Trojan Horse, once a symbol of peace, has become a harbinger of the city's doom. This is the moment when the story of Troy reaches its tragic, inevitable conclusion. The fall of Troy is not quick, nor is it clean. It's a slow, methodical collapse, one that shakes the very foundations of what the Trojans believed about their own invincibility. Inside the city walls, chaos reigns. The Greek soldiers, emerging from their hiding places within the horse, move swiftly and decisively. Their targets are clear: the leaders, the strongholds, and the key defenses. But as the soldiers spread out, it's not just the physical destruction that marks the fall of Troy. It's the emotional destruction, too. For the Trojans, their once mighty city is now a trap. Its defenses shattered not by brute force, but by the most subtle and cunning of tactics. It's impossible to imagine what the Trojans must have felt when the first sounds of Greek soldiers' boots echoed in the streets. The night, once full of feasts and laughter, is now filled with the sounds of panic and the clash of weapons. The Greeks have breached the city, and the soldiers are determined to see this war end once and for all. There's a deep irony in the way this unfolds. The Trojans, who have spent so many years defending their city with honor, now find themselves overwhelmed by the very people they thought they had defeated. It's the kind of unexpected twist that makes history so fascinating, when the tide of fate turns not with a clash of armies, but with the quiet opening of a gate and the cunning of a single mind. But there's another layer to this story that we can't ignore: the role of the gods. Even now, as Troy crumbles, the gods are watching, some with glee, others with dismay. You might think that at this point in the story, the gods would have taken a step back. After all, the Greeks have carried out their plan. The city is falling. Yet, the gods are not passive observers. The Greek gods continue to intervene, sometimes in ways that seem almost cruel. They have set this fate into motion, and now they're ensuring that it plays out as it was meant to. Consider the goddess Athena. Her involvement in this war was always significant. Her wisdom guiding the Greeks, her cunning woven into their strategies. Even now, in the final moments of Troy's fall, Athena is believed to have been actively aiding the Greeks, ensuring that they remain successful in their assault. Historians still argue about whether Athena's role in the war was more about guiding the Greeks to victory or about simply serving as a tool for fate itself. Whatever the case, her presence looms large, and as the Greeks move through the city, it feels as though her hand is at work in the shadows, guiding them to their final conquest. But not every god sides with the Greeks. The Trojan gods are not silent in this battle either. The gods who once supported Troy now watch helplessly as their city crumbles. The goddess Aphrodite, who had once blessed Paris with the love of Helen, must feel the sting of the city's fall. It's said that she weeps for Troy, just as the Trojan women will weep for their fallen city. Historians have long debated whether the gods could have intervened to stop the Greeks. Some believe that the gods' inaction was the ultimate form of justice, that they had simply allowed fate to unfold. Others suggest that the gods had become so entwined in the conflict that their intervention would only prolong the inevitable. With the city now in chaos, we return to the streets of Troy, where the Greek soldiers are carving through the once proud city. There's a certain brutality to their attack, but it's not just physical destruction. It's emotional destruction, too. The citizens of Troy, who once thought themselves untouchable, are now fighting for their lives, witnessing their city fall apart before their very eyes. The families who lived in comfort are now fighting for survival, their homes becoming battlegrounds. And as night turns to morning, the Greek soldiers are everywhere. Each street, each building, each corner is a site of devastation. But in all this, one question lingers. Will the Trojan leaders have time to regroup? Will they be able to mount any sort of defense? Unfortunately for the Trojans, the answer is no. The fall of Troy is more than just the destruction of a city. It's the destruction of a dream, of everything the Trojans held dear. The city had stood strong for so long, its walls holding out against invaders. It had a rich history, filled with heroes and gods, and yet it is all falling apart now because of a trick, a simple but brilliant deception. And in the end, it is not the strength of the Trojan warriors that will protect the city, but rather their ability to see the truth in the situation. The Trojans at this point are caught in the trap of their own making. Their unwillingness to trust their own suspicions, their overconfidence in their victory, is what seals their fate. This is where we come to the figure of Hector, the great Trojan hero. He had fought valiantly to defend his city, and it is said that he was the one man the Greeks feared. He was strong, brave, and loyal to Troy. Yet, even Hector's strength couldn't prevent the city's downfall. Hector's legacy, tragically, is not the saving of Troy, but rather the moment when the city's fate was sealed. Historians still debate whether Hector could have done anything differently, whether he could have taken a different approach. Some say he could have rallied his people better, while others argue that Hector fought the war with the honor and valor that was expected of him, but that in the end, it was all for nothing. As the Greeks pushed deeper into the city, you can almost feel the heavy weight of their victory. But it's a hollow victory. The Greeks, after all, have not won the war by sheer might. They've used deception, trickery, and guile to win, and even their success is tinged with the bitter taste of that. The fall of Troy is not just the story of a city destroyed. It's the story of how a single act of cleverness and trickery can bring even the greatest civilizations to their knees. In this moment, as the Greek soldiers sweep through the city, it's hard not to feel a sense of inevitability. It's the kind of story that, while tragic, is also necessary. For the Greeks, victory is bittersweet. For the Trojans, it is devastating. In the end, the Trojan Horse, the symbol of peace, the great gift left by the Greeks, turns out to be the most ironic of all symbols, the gift of death. The first light of dawn begins to cast long shadows across the ruined city of Troy. The golden sun, which had once shone brightly over the proud city, now bathes the streets in a harsh, unforgiving light. The Greeks are everywhere, inside every building, on every street, moving with purpose and speed. The battle is not over, but the city's heart has already been ripped out. It's hard to imagine how the Trojans are coping with the chaos around them. Those who survive the initial attack are either fighting desperately or fleeing for their lives. Yet, there's no real place to run. The city is surrounded. There's nowhere to go. This is it, the end of Troy. If you were there, you might have heard the sounds of destruction filling the air, clashing swords, the cries of the fallen, the desperate shouts of those trying to protect their homes. You might have heard the sorrowful wails of women, mourning not just their husbands and brothers, but their city, their very way of life. And in the midst of it all, the Greeks are relentless. They're not fighting for glory anymore. They're fighting for survival. They're fighting to ensure that this, their moment of victory, doesn't slip away. They've waited 10 long years for this. 10 years of battle, of hardship, of bloodshed. And now, their victory feels almost anticlimactic. It wasn't a battle won on the battlefield. It was won by trickery, by subtlety. Historians still debate how the Greeks felt in those final moments. Some say they were elated, finally able to claim the city they'd been battling for. Others argue that the victory fell hollow, that the deceit behind it weighed heavily on their conscience. After all, the Greeks had not conquered Troy in the traditional way, by overpowering it with military strength. No, they had used cunning, the oldest weapon of all. And as they moved through the streets, it's hard not to wonder if some of them regret the means by which they achieved their success. As the Greeks moved deeper into the city, they reached the palace of King Priam. The royal stronghold stands as the last symbol of Troy's power. But now is nothing more than a prize to be claimed. Priam, the last ruler of Troy, must have known that the end was near. His city is crumbling, his soldiers falling, and there is nothing left to protect him. Historians often wonder what must have gone through Priam's mind in these final moments. Was he still hopeful, still clinging to the belief that the gods would intervene and save his city? Or had he accepted the inevitable, knowing that his fate and the fate of Troy was sealed? Inside the royal palace, Priam, his family, and his closest advisors scramble to defend themselves. But it's too late. The Greeks have infiltrated the city and are now surrounding the last refuge of Troy. The sounds of their approach are unmistakable. The clash of armor, the shouts of Greek soldiers. Priam's final stand, if there ever was one, is doomed. His palace, once a symbol of Troy's strength, is now the last holdout of a city already lost. And then, there's the moment when Priam's fate is sealed. According to the myths, Priam faces the Greek leader Achilles. You can imagine the scene. Two great men, both of them kings, standing in the ruins of a city. Priam, old and weary, with nothing left but his dignity, and Achilles, fueled by rage and a sense of finality. Priam, despite his age, still has the courage to approach Achilles, asking for mercy for the body of his son Hector. It's a heart-wrenching moment. Priam, the proud king of Troy, now reduced to pleading for his son's body, knowing that it is the last thing he can do for the son who gave his life for the city. Achilles, still mourning the death of his close friend Patroclus, sees nothing but the destruction of Troy in front of him. There's no mercy in his heart for Priam. The tragic irony here is undeniable. Priam, who had once been a mighty king, now stands before the Greek warrior, pleading for a decency that has been long lost in the ashes of his city. And, in the end, Priam's plea is unanswered. He dies, just as Troy dies, without honor, without a chance at redemption. This moment marks the complete collapse of the Trojan monarchy, the last remnants of Troy's greatness. As the palace falls, the Greek soldiers begin to carry out the final task, the looting of Troy. The treasures that had once filled the city are now in the hands of the invaders. The mighty walls of Troy, which had withstood countless sieges, now stand as nothing more than a memory. What was once a proud city, known for its wealth, its architecture, and its heroes, is now a shattered ruin. And for the Greeks, it is a victory, but a victory that feels more like a funeral than a celebration. But what happens next? The aftermath of Troy's destruction is a long and painful one. The Greeks, having secured their victory, begin to make their way back home. Their journey is not without peril. Some of the most famous stories of the ancient world come from what happens after the fall of Troy. Tales of vengeance, of long voyages, of the gods once again intervening in the lives of mortals. The Greek hero Odysseus, for example, must now make his way back to Ithaca, but his journey will take 10 more years, filled with trials and tribulations. Historians still debate whether the destruction of Troy was truly a singular event, or if it marked the beginning of a larger shift in ancient warfare. Was the Trojan Horse the first real act of psychological warfare, or was it just another tragic story in the endless cycle of war? Perhaps it was both. And so, the fall of Troy becomes a symbol of not just military might, but also of human nature itself. Our capacity for both greatness and destruction, for victory and for loss. It's a story that transcends time, reminding us that even the mightiest of cities can fall to the simplest of tricks, and that even the most legendary heroes can be brought low by the very cunning they once wielded so expertly. As the last remnants of Troy burn under the rising sun, the Greeks begin to make their way back to their ships. The city is in ruin, its once glorious streets now nothing but rubble. The air is thick with the acrid smell of smoke, mingling with the salty sea breeze. The sound of distant waves crashing against the shore seems almost like a cruel reminder of how quickly the mighty can fall. And yet, as the Greeks board their ships, there's no great celebration. No cheering, no victory songs echo through the air. Instead, there's an eerie silence. The weight of what they've done is heavier than any trophy. The fall of Troy has been a long, hard journey for the Greeks, one that has taken years off their lives, both physically and emotionally. As they sail away from the shores of the city, many are likely reflecting on the price of their victory. The Greek soldiers, having endured the horrors of war for a decade, now find themselves questioning the true cost of what they've won. Some may be haunted by the lives lost, by the destruction they've wrought. Others, like Odysseus, may be consumed by the desire to return home, their minds already focused on the journey ahead, the families they left behind. But, as much as the Greeks try to turn their attention to what lies ahead, they cannot escape the weight of their actions. Historians still debate the psychological impact that the fall of Troy had on the Greeks. Some argue that the Trojan War marked the beginning of a great loss of innocence for the Greeks, who had always seen themselves as the heroes of their own story. No longer were they fighting for honor or glory. They had used trickery and deception to win. The Trojan Horse, a symbol of their victory, would also be a symbol of their moral ambiguity. For Odysseus, the hero of the Trojan Horse, the journey home is just beginning. His long voyage back to Ithaca will take him on a winding, treacherous path that lasts another decade. His adventures, which will include encounters with monsters, gods, and spirits, will make him a legend in his own right. But the question remains, will Odysseus return a hero, or will he be forever changed by the war and his actions? Historians still argue whether Odysseus truly learns from his past, or if he is simply caught in the cyclical nature of human behavior, always seeking glory, but never quite finding peace. Meanwhile, back in Troy, the consequences of the Greek victory are still unfolding. The survivors, those who managed to escape the slaughter, are left to pick up the pieces of their broken lives. Women and children are taken as captives, their fates uncertain. Many are forced into slavery, while others are taken as concubines or wives to the Greek victors. Among them is Helen, the woman whose beauty sparked the war. After all the bloodshed, after the deaths of so many, what will become of her? Will Menelaus, her husband, take her back into his arms, or will he be consumed by bitterness and rage? Historians are still divided on Helen's fate. Some believe that her return to Menelaus is a moment of reconciliation, a way for the Greeks to heal after the devastation of the war. Others argue that Helen, as the symbol of the war itself, will never truly find peace. The cost of her beauty, her role in starting the war, has been too high. There's an undeniable sense of tragedy to her story, one that has been told and retold through the centuries and still remains one of the most enduring themes of Greek mythology. But as Helen's fate hangs in the balance, the Greek victors face a different kind of reckoning. They are returning home, but not as the men they were when they first set sail for Troy. For Odysseus, his journey home will be marked by loss, by the ghosts of those he left behind. For Achilles, who died at the hands of Paris, the Trojan War is a story that ends in sacrifice. Achilles' death, though glorious in its own way, ultimately proves that even the greatest of heroes cannot escape the whims of fate. And for Hector, the brave Trojan prince who fought to the bitter end, there is no redemption. His death, while heroic, is a reminder of how fleeting honor can be in a world dominated by gods and men. The gods, of course, are never far from a story. They continue to play their part, weaving fate as they see fit. Athena, who had supported the Greeks throughout the war, now watches as Odysseus faces his trials on his journey home. But even she cannot save him from the punishment of the gods. Poseidon, angry at Odysseus for blinding his son Polyphemus, is relentless in his pursuit of the Greek hero. The gods' whims continue to shape the lives of mortals, even after the war is over. Historians still argue about the role of the gods in the Trojan War. Were they simply manifestations of human fears and desires, or did they have a more direct role in shaping events? Some scholars believe that the gods were a way for the Greeks to explain the inexplicable, events beyond human control. Others see the gods as an integral part of the narrative, constantly meddling in the affairs of mortals, shaping the course of history for better or worse. But in the end, what truly stands out about the Trojan War and the story of the Trojan Horse is how it encapsulates the best and worst of human nature. The war itself was born out of pride, revenge, and love. It was fought with courage and honor, but also with deceit and trickery. And the Trojan horse, as a symbol of victory, becomes the symbol of all that was wrong with the war. It's a victory that comes at the cost of everything the Trojans held dear: their city, their people, their way of life. And for the Greeks, it's a hollow triumph, a reminder that sometimes the ends do not justify the means. As the Greeks set sail for home, leaving Troy in ashes, they carry with them the memory of what they have lost and what they have gained. The Trojan War, with its heroes and villains, its victories and tragedies, is now a part of history. But the lessons it offers about the costs of war, the power of deception, and the consequences of pride are timeless. The Trojan horse, that great symbol of trickery, remains a warning to us all. Even the greatest victories can come at a price. The Greeks' journey home from Troy is filled with uncertainty, but the story of their victory, of the Trojan horse, does not end with the fall of the city. It lingers like a shadow as they make their way back to their homeland. They've conquered Troy, but now they must face the consequences of their actions. The gods, who had once guided them to victory, are not finished with them yet. If anything, their journey is only just beginning, and the weight of their deception will come crashing down on them as they travel the seas toward home. Take, for example, Odysseus, the hero of the Trojan horse, the man whose cunning won the war, now finds himself at the mercy of the gods. His return to Ithaca, once a simple task, has become a labyrinth of trials and tribulations, each more perilous than the last. His 10-year journey is an epic in itself, filled with monsters, gods, and temptations. But despite the many obstacles he faces, Odysseus' greatest challenge may be the one he can't outrun: the curse of the gods. Poseidon, furious at Odysseus for blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, is relentless. For every step forward that Odysseus takes, Poseidon strikes back with another storm or a treacherous obstacle. Even the gods, it seems, cannot forget the Trojan War, and they will ensure that Odysseus, no matter how clever or brave, pays the price for his victory. But Odysseus is nothing if not resourceful. His ability to think on his feet, to adapt to any situation, has always been his greatest strength. It's this very cunning that helped him build the Trojan horse, and it's this same wit that will help him survive the trials ahead. Still, it's clear that his actions in the war, his deception, his trickery, have consequences that he cannot escape. His story, like the story of Troy, is one of both triumph and tragedy. The same could be said for the other heroes of the Greek army. Achilles, the greatest warrior of them all, died during the war, his fate sealed by a simple arrow to his vulnerable heel. His death was inevitable, but it was still tragic. In the end, Achilles' story isn't one of glory, though he is remembered as one of the greatest heroes in Greek mythology, but of a man undone by his own rage and pride. He fought for honor and revenge, but in the end, he left the world in ashes, with nothing to show for it except a name that would live on forever in song and story. The price of his pride was his life. And for what? For vengeance? For the idea of glory? Was it worth it? As for Hector, the Trojan prince who fought with such honor. His story is one of the most tragic of all. Hector was the man who defended his city with all his strength, who fought to protect his people and his family. Yet, in the end, it was Hector's love for his city and his family that sealed his fate. He was killed by Achilles, dragged through the streets of Troy behind a chariot, his body desecrated, a hero's fate tarnished by the cruel hand of war. Despite his bravery, Hector, like Achilles, was a casualty of pride and revenge. Historians still argue over whether Hector could have done anything differently, whether his fate was sealed from the start. Could he have fled the battlefield? Could he have accepted peace? Some believe that Hector, like Achilles, was driven by the need for honor, a concept that both Greeks and Trojans held dear, but it was ultimately a concept that led both to their downfall. Now, with the city of Troy in ruins and the Greeks on their way home, we must return to the women of Troy, who faced a different kind of fate. The wives, the mothers, the daughters, all of them left to deal with the aftermath of the war. These women were the ones who truly suffered the most. They lost their husbands, their sons, their brothers, and their homes. Some were taken as slaves, others were forced to marry their captors. And, perhaps most famously, Helen, the cause of it all, was forced to return to her husband, Menelaus. After all the bloodshed, the destruction, and the sorrow, Menelaus took Helen back, perhaps out of duty, perhaps out of love, but certainly not without some bitterness. Historians debate the true nature of Helen's return to Menelaus. Some suggest that it was a moment of reconciliation, a way to bring peace to a war-torn world. Others argue that it was a tragic, hollow gesture, as Helen could never truly return to the life she had before. She had caused too much destruction, had been the catalyst for too much suffering. And in the end, she had to live with the knowledge that her beauty had led to the death of thousands. Was Helen a victim of the gods? Or was she, like the rest of the people involved in the war, simply a pawn in a much larger game? For the Trojans, there is no such reconciliation. Their city is in ruins, their leaders dead, their families scattered. The fall of Troy is a moment of profound loss, and the survivors must now grapple with the enormity of their defeat. For them, the Trojan Horse is the ultimate symbol of betrayal, of how easily a great civilization can be brought to its knees by deception. It's a symbol of the fragility of peace, of how even the greatest cities, built on pride, on the protection of their people, on the belief in their own invincibility, can fall when least expected. And what of the gods? They too must face the consequences of the Trojan War. For many, the war was a game, a way to settle disputes and rivalries. The gods were the ultimate manipulators, pulling the strings from above, causing chaos and destruction on earth. But as the dust settles, even the gods must contend with the fallout of their actions. Some will continue to meddle in the lives of mortals, while others will retreat, leaving the world to its own devices. Historians still debate the role of the gods in the war. Were they mere symbols of fate, or were they actual players in the lives of men and women? Could the gods have changed the outcome of the war, or was the fall of Troy inevitable, shaped by human flaws and divine manipulation alike? In the end, the story of the Trojan War, of the Trojan Horse, is not just a tale of heroes and villains. It's a story about the costs of war, about the consequences of pride, and about how easily even the greatest civilizations can be destroyed by deceit and treachery. It's a story about how nothing, no matter how grand, no matter how strong, can escape the forces of fate. And it's a reminder that, in the end, all victories are temporary and all empires fall. As the Greeks make their way home, leaving the ruins of Troy behind, the echoes of the war continue to haunt them. The stories of the great warriors, the heroic deeds, and the tragedies are not just relics of the past. They follow them like ghosts, whispering through the wind. Odysseus, still struggling against the wrath of Poseidon, is the embodiment of that relentless pursuit of home, of peace, yet also of never truly escaping the past. His journey, as famous as it is, isn't just a physical one. It's a mental and emotional voyage, a pilgrimage toward redemption, if such a thing is even possible after the violence of war and the treachery that led to victory. As Odysseus sails across the seas, the gods have not forgotten him. Poseidon's wrath remains constant, turning every wave into a potential disaster, every island into a new trial. But it's not just the gods that Odysseus must face, it's his own past. He must reconcile with the man he was before the war, the cunning strategist who crafted the Trojan Horse, and the man he has become after all the pain and loss. Odysseus may be returning to Ithaca, but the journey home will be long, filled with monsters, enchantresses, and temptations. His homecoming is far from a simple return. It's a transformation. Historians often view Odysseus as the quintessential hero of Greek mythology, not because of his strength or skill in battle, but because of his intellect. It's his mind, more than his sword, that brings the Greeks their greatest victory. The Trojan Horse, his greatest scheme, was the result of his ability to think beyond the obvious. It wasn't about brute force. It was about subtlety, about turning the Trojan perception of peace into a weapon. And yet, in his attempt to return home, we see the flip side of that cunning. A man who, despite all his intelligence, is constantly tested by his own hubris, by the gods, and by the consequences of his past actions. Even as Odysseus battles his way through monstrous foes like the Cyclops Polyphemus, who still seeks revenge on the Greek hero for blinding him, he's haunted by the knowledge that the gods are keeping him from his final destination. But there's another layer to his story. As Odysseus faces each trial, we see a man who is also trying to reconcile with the choices he made during the war. Each obstacle on his journey is a reflection of the internal struggle he faces, the guilt, the regrets, and the realization that the Trojan Horse, while a brilliant victory, may have come at too high a price. For the Trojans, however, there is no journey. Their fate has already been sealed. The city of Troy is in ruins, its people scattered, enslaved, or slain. The great city that once stood as the pride of the ancient world is now a symbol of destruction. The Trojan Horse, once thought to be a symbol of peace, has become the ultimate instrument of their demise. Historians still debate how much the Trojans could have known or suspected before they brought the horse inside their walls. Could they have seen through the Greeks' trickery? Could they have noticed the signs of deception? Some argue that the Trojans were simply too exhausted from 10 years of war to question what seemed to be the end of the siege. Others suggest that their pride, their belief in their invincibility, made them blind to the possibility of defeat. But in the end, the story of Troy is not just about the Trojan Horse. It's about the hubris of the Trojans, their belief that their walls and their gods would protect them forever. It's about the same pride that led to the destruction of the city, a lesson that can be seen time and time again throughout history. The Trojans were not simply victims of the Greeks. They were also victims of their own overconfidence. As the city crumbles, as the last remnants of Troy are consumed by the flames, the Trojans are left to reflect on what they might have done differently. Could they have fought harder? Could they have seen the danger in the horse? Or is their fate simply sealed by the gods? And yet, even in the aftermath of Troy's destruction, the legacy of the war lives on. The story of the Trojan Horse, the story of deception and trickery, is passed down through the generations, immortalized in song and legend. The Greeks may have won, but the price of that victory is not something easily forgotten. The war, the horse, and the fall of Troy are not just stories of battles fought and cities destroyed. They are reflections of the darker aspects of human nature. The ability to deceive, to manipulate, to use others as pawns in a game of war. These are the themes that echo through the ages, shaping the way we understand power, pride, and the cost of victory. For the Greeks, returning home is no simple feat. The journey is long, and for many, it is fraught with peril. The gods continue to intervene, ensuring that the consequences of their actions cannot be avoided. And even when they do finally return, they find that the world they left behind is not the same. In some cases, like that of Odysseus, homecoming means coming to terms with the changes that have occurred, not just in the world, but within themselves. The men who left for Troy may have been heroes, but the men who return are forever changed. The Trojan War, with all its glory and tragedy, has left its mark on them. They may have been victorious, but in victory, they have lost something precious. Some, like Achilles, have paid with their lives. Others, like Odysseus, will find that their greatest battles lie ahead of them, against themselves, against the ghosts of the past. The Trojan Horse, a symbol of the Greeks' greatest triumph, becomes a reminder of the fragility of that victory. The Greeks may have defeated Troy, but they are not immune to the consequences of their actions. The Trojan horse, in the end, is not just a weapon of war. It's a symbol of the ways in which we all, in our own lives, sometimes deceive ourselves, thinking that our victories will come without cost. In the end, there's always a price to pay for the choices we make. As the Greeks sail away from Troy, leaving the ruins behind, they are reminded that the war is over, but the consequences will last forever. The Trojan horse has done its job, but its legacy will endure far longer than the city of Troy ever did. The journey home for the Greeks, particularly for Odysseus, is one of the most iconic narratives in Greek mythology. As Odysseus sets sail away from the ashes of Troy, he is filled not with the elation of victory, but with a gnawing uncertainty. The war may be over, but the troubles are far from finished. For Odysseus, the true battle is just beginning. The battle to return home, to find peace, and perhaps, most importantly, to reconcile with the consequences of his actions. Remember that cleverness of Odysseus, the same wit that allowed him to devise the Trojan horse. It will serve him well, but not without its own set of challenges. For while the horse was an instrument of deception, Odysseus is now about to face the harsh realities of his trickery. The gods, as always, continue to weave their hands into the lives of mortals, and for Odysseus, their influence is unyielding. Poseidon, the god of the sea, is still furious about the blinding of his son, Polyphemus, and he makes sure to remind Odysseus of his anger at every turn. No smooth sailing awaits this hero. The sea itself seems to conspire against him, sending storm after storm, pushing him further and further off course. Every time Odysseus thinks he is close to reaching his beloved Ithaca, the gods pull him back into their web of trials and tribulations. But the heart of Odysseus' journey lies in his character and his choices. It's not just about fighting monsters like the Cyclops or avoiding the temptations of Circe and the Sirens. It's about confronting his own guilt. You see, Odysseus may have been a mastermind behind the Trojan horse, but that victory did not come without a cost. The trick that led to Troy's fall left behind a trail of destruction, and it wasn't just the city that suffered, it was the people. The Trojan women, taken as captives, the children left orphaned, and the many who died in the flames of Troy were victims of Odysseus' cunning. As he sails on, the weight of this knowledge sits heavily on his heart. Can he ever truly return home without confronting the aftermath of his actions? Historians still debate whether Odysseus truly learns from his past, or whether he continues to be shaped by his own pride and cleverness. Is he a hero, or is he a tragic figure, cursed by the very qualities that made him great? Some argue that the gods are simply punishing him for his role in the war, for the arrogance that led to the downfall of Troy. Others believe that Odysseus' suffering is not just divine retribution, but a necessary part of his personal growth. After all, his journey home is as much about self-discovery as it is about physical return. Meanwhile, in Troy, the destruction continues to echo in the ruins. The city that once stood as a symbol of might and glory now lies in ashes. Those who managed to survive the initial Greek assault are left to pick up the pieces of their broken lives. The women of Troy, in particular, face a bleak future. Most of the men of Troy are dead, slain by Greek swords, and now the women are taken captive. Some will be taken back to Greece as spoils of war. Concubines, slaves, and forced wives to the victorious soldiers. Others, like Andromache, the wife of Hector, will be left to mourn their lost loved ones, their city, and their way of life. The fate of Helen, The woman whose beauty sparked the entire war is another point of much debate. After all the devastation, after the death and suffering she caused, Helen is forced to return to her husband, Menelaus, the king of Sparta. But what kind of homecoming awaits her? Some argue that Menelaus takes her back out of a sense of duty, perhaps even out of some twisted love. But others suggest that their reunion is not a happy one, marked by bitterness and regret. After all, Helen's role in the war cannot be forgotten, and neither can the price that was paid for her. Historians have long debated the true nature of Helen's return, whether it represents a tragic reconciliation or a hollow gesture. For the Greeks, taking her back might have been a way to restore order, to bring closure to the war. But for Helen, it's a constant reminder of the cost of her beauty and the destruction it caused. For the Trojans, there will never be such reconciliation. Their city, once great and powerful, is reduced to a pile of rubble. The people are scattered, broken, their homes destroyed. The Trojan Horse, which had once been seen as a symbol of victory, now stands as a reminder of how easily a great civilization can be brought to its knees by a simple ruse. The fall of Troy is a story of human hubris, the belief that they were invincible, that their gods would protect them. It is a story of deception, of how a clever plan can change the course of history. But most importantly, it's a story of loss, of a city that fell because of its pride and its inability to see the truth in front of them. As the Greeks sail away from Troy, leaving it in ruins, they carry with them not just the spoils of war, but the knowledge that no victory comes without a price. They may have won the battle, but the war will live on in their hearts, in the memories of those they've lost, and in the stories of those they betrayed. The Trojan Horse, a symbol of triumph, is also a symbol of the darker side of war, of the lies we tell ourselves to justify our actions, of the ways we manipulate others to get what we want, and of the consequences of those actions. Historians have long marveled at the sheer brilliance of the Trojan Horse, but they've also recognized the deeper lesson it teaches. The victory won by deception is often hollow. It may seem glorious at first, but it is ultimately a victory that cannot be fully enjoyed. The consequences of that victory will follow the Greeks and the Trojans alike, shaping their futures in ways they could never have imagined. The Trojan Horse, then, is not just a tale of war and strategy. It is a reflection of the human condition. It is a story about how our actions, no matter how clever or well-intentioned, can lead to unintended consequences. It is about the choices we make and the price we pay for those choices. And it is a reminder that, no matter how victorious we may seem in the moment, the shadows of our past will always follow us. The story of the Trojan War, and the Trojan Horse in particular, is not merely a tale of ancient warfare. It's a narrative that transcends time, offering insights into the complexities of human nature, of pride, cunning, and the irreversible consequences of our actions. The Greeks may have won the war, but the cost of that victory, embodied in the wooden horse, will follow them for the rest of their lives. As the Greeks make their way home, the story doesn't end with the simple victory of battle. There's something much darker lurking beneath the surface. Odysseus, the mastermind behind the Trojan Horse, may have been victorious on the battlefield, but his journey home is far from straightforward. In fact, it is marked by a series of trials that seem to punish him not just for his cleverness, but for the choices he made during the war. The gods, ever watching and ever meddling, are not finished with Odysseus. Poseidon, enraged by the blinding of his son, Polyphemus, ensures that Odysseus' voyage back to Ithaca will be filled with obstacles and temptations. In some ways, the gods' wrath reflects the very nature of war itself. Unpredictable, often cruel, and marked by consequences that reach far beyond the battlefield. Odysseus, a man who masterminded a plan that brought Troy to its knees, finds himself stuck in an endless struggle against the forces of nature, the gods, and ultimately his own past. His journey back to Ithaca takes 10 long years. 10 years, not just of physical hardships, but also of soul-searching. As Odysseus confronts various mythical creatures, such as the Cyclops, the Sirens, and Scylla and Charybdis, he must also confront himself. The journey isn't simply about returning to his home. It's about coming to terms with his actions, his choices, and the war that has forever altered him. The Trojan Horse, the very symbol of his greatest achievement, becomes a burden he must bear, as it is tied to the suffering of so many. He sees the consequences of his cleverness play out before him. Each monster, each god, each obstacle is a reminder of the price of victory. And perhaps, deep down, Odysseus knows that his success came at the cost of more than just the fall of Troy. It cost him peace. In Ithaca, meanwhile, his wife, Penelope, waits. She holds on to the hope that her husband will return, even though it seems impossible. The 10 years of war and the subsequent 10 years of Odysseus' struggles are a long time to remain faithful, and she is tested in ways she never could have imagined. Penelope's unwavering loyalty is a reflection of her own strength and resilience, but it also speaks to the deep human desire for closure, for a sense of completion. For Odysseus, the journey home is not just about reuniting with his wife. It is about returning to the life he left behind and finding peace with the past that haunts him. Historians still debate the meaning of Odysseus' return. Some see it as the ultimate triumph, the hero's journey completed after years of hardship. Others view it more cynically, as the inevitable result of a man trying to outrun the consequences of his actions. Odysseus, after all, is not a pure hero. He is a man whose brilliance is marred by his flaws, whose victory is tainted by the destruction he caused. The gods, in their constant meddling, ensure that Odysseus' homecoming is not a simple return to a hero's welcome. It's a reminder that no matter how far one travels, no matter how much time passes, the past is always waiting to catch up with you. And yet, in the final moments, when Odysseus is reunited with Penelope, there is a sense of resolution. His journey is over. The war is over. Troy is a memory, its once great walls reduced to rubble. But the lessons learned from that war, from the Trojan Horse, and from the decisions of those involved will never fade. The Trojan Horse, that symbol of trickery, has become more than just a clever ruse. It is a warning to those who seek victory at any cost. The Greeks may have defeated Troy, but the victory was bittersweet, and its repercussions are felt long after the battle is won. For the Trojans, there is no such resolution. Their city is gone, their heroes fallen. The great city of Troy, with its rich culture and proud history, has been reduced to a pile of ruins. The Trojan Horse, once a symbol of peace and goodwill, has now become a symbol of betrayal, a reminder of how easily a civilization can be undone by its own pride. The Trojans, in their blind belief that they were invincible, failed to see the danger when it stood right before them. Their downfall was not just the result of the Greeks' trickery, but also of their own hubris. Their inability to question their own fate, to see the truth of what was happening around them. Historians continue to debate whether the fall of Troy was inevitable. Some argue that the gods had already decided the city's fate long before the Greeks set sail, that the war and the eventual destruction of Troy were predestined. Others believe that it was the Trojans' own actions, particularly their overconfidence and trust in the Greeks, that led to their downfall. The Trojan Horse, in this sense, becomes not just a tool of war, but a symbol of human folly, the belief that one can escape the consequences of their choices through strength alone. The Trojan War, and the story of the Trojan Horse, serves as a reminder of the fragile nature of peace and the cost of pride. It teaches us that even the greatest civilizations can fall when they least expect it. It shows that even the mightiest heroes can be undone by their flaws, their pride, and their failure to recognize the truth in front of them. And it underscores the idea that ultimately no one, no city, no hero, no empire can escape the consequences of their actions. In the end, the story of Troy and of the Trojan Horse is not just a story of war. It is a story of human nature, of the choices we make, and of the price we pay for those choices. It is a cautionary tale, one that continues to resonate with us, reminding us of the fragility of peace, the power of deception, and the cost of victory. As the years pass after the fall of Troy, the legend of the Trojan Horse continues to echo through time. Its symbolism grows stronger, transcending its role in the destruction of a city and becoming a broader reflection on human behavior. The interplay between fate and free will and the consequences of our actions. The Greeks, now returning home, still carry the weight of their victory, not as a moment of unbridled glory, but as a heavy burden they cannot shake off. For the soldiers who fought at Troy, the memories of the war are impossible to escape. They have conquered a city, but they have also destroyed a way of life, a civilization, and in many ways, a part of themselves. The Trojan Horse, that brilliant but deceptive device, is more than just a physical object. It's a reminder of the cost of the war. It serves as a constant symbol of the lengths to which the Greeks went to achieve victory. But victory at what cost? Was the defeat of Troy worth the years of war, the countless lives lost, and the moral consequences that have followed the Greeks home? For Odysseus, the man who masterminded the Trojan Horse, the consequences are especially profound. While his cunning earned him fame and victory in Troy, it also left him with a deep internal struggle. His journey home is a reflection of that struggle, a physical journey across treacherous seas, but also a mental and emotional journey of self-examination. For every monster he defeats, for every trial he survives, Odysseus must face the guilt and remorse over the destruction that his mind, his very cleverness, helped bring about. As he battles to return to Ithaca, he realizes that victory doesn't always bring peace, and sometimes the price of success is far higher than we anticipate. The gods continue to manipulate the lives of mortals, as they always have. Poseidon's anger toward Odysseus serves as a powerful reminder that the gods are not mere onlookers in the lives of humans. They are active participants in the creation of fate, ensuring that their will is carried out no matter the cost. Poseidon's wrath is personal. It's a reminder that the gods are not always benevolent, and they often punish mortals for crossing them. Odysseus, no matter how clever, is still subject to their whims, as are all the Greeks, whose victory over Troy has earned them the gods' attention. The Trojan horse itself remains a symbol, not just of the fall of Troy, but of the dangers of overconfidence, of the belief that peace can be achieved through deception, and of the consequences of manipulating others. The Greeks, in their pursuit of victory, may have been justified in their cause, but their methods will forever stain the purity of that victory. It's a lesson in the fragility of human intentions. The idea that even the noblest causes can be marred by the methods we choose to achieve them. For the Trojans, the story is one of loss and mourning. Their great city is reduced to ashes, their heroes dead or enslaved. The Trojan horse, once a symbol of a gift, has become a reminder of how trust can be easily betrayed and how pride can blind us to the dangers lurking just beyond our walls. Troy's downfall serves as a tragic lesson in the importance of humility. The Trojans had believed their city was impregnable, that their gods would protect them, but in the end, it was their own arrogance that led to their destruction. It's the kind of hubris that has destroyed many great civilizations throughout history, and the fall of Troy serves as one of the most poignant reminders. The women of Troy, too, are left with the scars of the war. Captive and torn from their homes, they become pawns in a greater game, their fates sealed by the whims of the victors. Helen, the woman whose beauty sparked the conflict, must return to Menelaus, her husband, as if nothing had happened, as if the destruction and death were simply a passing storm. But how can one move past such a catastrophe? Historians debate whether Helen truly returns to Menelaus out of love, or whether she is simply a symbol of the war's futility, the one who caused the bloodshed and now must face the consequences. Some say Helen's return to Menelaus is an attempt at reconciliation, a way to bring an end to the war's painful legacy. Others argue that it's a hollow gesture, a tragedy in itself. In the end, Helen becomes an icon of beauty, but also of the fragility of peace. Her story is one of victimhood and complicity, of the choices made for love, for beauty, and for pride. It's a tale that will be told again and again throughout the ages, a cautionary reminder of how easily the line between heroism and betrayal can blur. For the Greeks, the fall of Troy marks the end of an era of heroes, of great wars, and of divine intervention. The story of the Trojan Horse will be told for generations to come, not just as a tale of war, but as a parable about the cost of victory and the price of deception. The Greeks may have been the victors, but the Trojan horse is a symbol of how fragile that victory truly was. The gods, the heroes, and the people of both Troy and Greece are forever bound by the events that unfolded in the shadow of that great wooden horse. But the legacy of Troy does not end with its destruction. The stories of its heroes, its gods, and its fall continue to resonate, serving as a reminder of the cyclical nature of history. Empires rise and fall, heroes come and go, but the lessons of Troy remain. The Trojan horse, a brilliant piece of strategy and deceit, lives on as a metaphor for the way human nature functions, how we can be swayed by the promise of peace, only to find ourselves caught in the grip of our own pride and mistakes. The story of Troy is one of war, yes, but it's also one of humanity itself. It is about the choices we make, the consequences of those choices, and the way we learn or fail to learn from our actions. It teaches us that even in the face of victory, we must reckon with the past, for the past always has a way of catching up with us. And perhaps, most importantly, it shows us that no matter how much we may wish to escape the consequences of our decisions, there is always a reckoning. The Trojan horse, like all great symbols, is both a victory and a curse. As the tales of the Trojan War, and particularly the story of the Trojan horse, continue to spread across generations, their impact reaches far beyond the realms of mythology. The myth serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of deception and the inevitable consequences of our choices, no matter how strategic or clever they may seem. The Greeks, for all their cunning and military prowess, are left to grapple with the emotional and psychological toll of their actions, while the Trojans, now scattered and broken, must try to rebuild their lives from the ruins of a once great city. It's hard to overstate how monumental the fall of Troy is in the grand arc of mythology. Troy wasn't just any city. It was the jewel of the ancient world, a bastion of culture and strength. To bring it to its knees required more than just a show of force. It demanded strategy, deception, and divine intervention. And that's what the Trojan horse symbolized. The perfect marriage of human intellect and divine capriciousness. The horse was not only a trick of the Greeks. It was a manifestation of the god's hand in mortal affairs, a lesson that no one, whether a mortal or divine being, was ever truly in control. For Odysseus, the hero at the heart of the horse's creation, the repercussions are enormous. The consequences of the Trojan horse follow him throughout his entire journey home. Every step of his voyage back to Ithaca is clouded by the ghosts of the past. Poseidon, vengeful and unforgiving, pursues him relentlessly. And as he faces each challenge, from the Cyclops to the enchantress Circe, he must also face his own internal turmoil. Was the trick worth it? Could he have used his cleverness differently, perhaps for peace instead of destruction? These questions haunt him, and they haunt the audience as well. The Trojan horse, though a symbol of military genius, is also a metaphor for the internal struggles that follow every act of deception. Odysseus' journey, while it involves confronting monsters and overcoming temptations, is, at its core, about coming to terms with the choices he made during the Trojan War. His ultimate challenge isn't defeating the physical trials placed before him. It's about confronting the emotional and psychological aftermath of his involvement in the fall of Troy. In many ways, Odysseus becomes a symbol of the eternal struggle between personal ambition and moral responsibility. He is a hero who sought victory through intelligence and trickery, but in the process, he unknowingly sowed the seeds for his own suffering. But what about the other heroes of the Trojan War? What becomes of those who fought valiantly in the defense of Troy, like Hector? His death at the hands of Achilles is one of the most tragic moments of the war. Hector, the noble Trojan prince, fought for his city, his family, and his people, embodying the virtues of honor and courage. Yet, in the end, he too is a victim of the larger forces at play, forces that he could not control. His story is a reminder that, in war, nobility and valor can be overshadowed by fate. Historians still reflect on Hector's death and the nature of heroism in warfare. Was his noble sacrifice worth it? Or was it, too, a futile stand against an overwhelming tide of destruction? And what does it mean to be a hero in the face of a war that, in hindsight, was based on such deceit? In a strange way, both Achilles and Hector represent two sides of the same coin. Achilles, driven by rage and vengeance, is a hero whose emotions and pride ultimately lead to his downfall. Hector, on the other hand, is motivated by duty and love, yet he too is unable to escape the fate that awaits him. Their stories are intertwined, not just in battle, but in the way they serve as reflections of human nature. Achilles, though a warrior of immense strength, is undone by his own pride and anger. Hector, though a noble defender of his city, is undone by the overwhelming forces beyond his control. Both characters, in their own ways, highlight the unpredictability and tragedy of war, and the futility of heroism in a world shaped by fate and the gods. For the women of Troy, the aftermath is no less devastating. After the fall of the city, the surviving Trojan women are taken as captives, forced to live lives of slavery and despair. Among them is Andromache, Hector's wife, whose grief is palpable. In the myths, we see the stark contrast between the male warriors and the women left behind, who must contend not just with the loss of their loved ones, but with the devastation of their entire world. The women of Troy are often portrayed as victims of a war not of their making, caught in the crossfire of gods and men alike. Their story is one of survival, but also of immense suffering. Their resilience, however, in the face of such hardship, speaks volumes about the human spirit and the ability to endure even the most crushing of fates. Helen, too, becomes a symbol of the war's tragic consequences. She returns to Menelaus, but it is clear that their relationship is forever changed. Helen, whose beauty caused the war, now bears the weight of that war's devastation. The question of whether she is a victim or a villain is one that has long been debated by scholars and poets. Is she simply a pawn in the hands of the gods, or is she the cause of all the suffering that follows? The irony of her return to Menelaus, her beauty having sparked so much destruction, is not lost on anyone. Helen's story, in many ways, encapsulates the entire tragedy of the Trojan War. It is a story of human flaws, of pride, of desire, and of the cost of unchecked ambition. As the Greeks sail away, leaving the ruins of Troy behind them, they carry with them not just the spoils of war, but the knowledge that victory is fleeting and that the true cost of war is far greater than they ever imagined. The Trojan Horse, that brilliant piece of strategy, becomes the symbol of their victory, but also of their moral ambiguity. The Greeks may have won the war, but they have also lost something irreplaceable. They have lost their innocence, their sense of purity in victory, and perhaps even their understanding of what true heroism is. The Trojan Horse, in the end, is more than just a piece of wood. It is a reminder of the complex nature of war, of the fine line between heroism and deception, and of the consequences that follow in the wake of conflict. Whether in Troy or in Greece, the lessons of the war will reverberate for generations. In this story, there are no true victors, just survivors carrying the weight of a war that never truly ends. The fall of Troy and the Trojan horse that enabled its collapse marks the conclusion of one of the most iconic wars in Greek mythology. But the consequences of this legendary conflict stretch far beyond the battlefield, lingering in the shadows of both Greek and Trojan hearts. While the Greeks return home with the spoils of war, their journey back is more than just the completion of a long and arduous trek. It is the beginning of their reckoning. And as each hero sails away from Troy, they face the undeniable reality that no victory, no matter how brilliantly achieved, comes without cost. For Odysseus, the mastermind of the Trojan Horse, this cost is particularly apparent. The Trojan War is over, but its echoes reverberate through every step of his journey home. He had once stood as a shining example of intellect and cunning, the man who turned the tides of war with a single, brilliant idea. But as the years pass, Odysseus begins to realize the true weight of his actions. The Trojan Horse, the very symbol of his triumph, becomes a reminder of the destruction that cleverness and deceit can bring. His homecoming, as anticipated as it may seem, is anything but peaceful. Poseidon, still furious over the blinding of his son Polyphemus, ensures that Odysseus faces one trial after another, forcing the Greek hero to confront the consequences of his pride and trickery. Odysseus, who once relied on his intellect to win the war, is now forced to face a far greater challenge, reconciling with the destruction he has wrought. The islands he encounters are filled with creatures and dangers, but it is the weight of his past decisions, the war, the Trojan Horse, that truly haunts him. Every monster he defeats, every god he outwits, is a reminder of how far his past actions have stretched, how far they have carried him from the man he was before the war. The cleverness that won him victory is now a burden, an inescapable shadow, and as he sails toward Ithaca, he wonders if he can ever truly return to the man he once was. Historians and poets have long debated Odysseus' homecoming. Was it a triumph, or was it a sign that the very nature of victory is corrupting? While Odysseus' journey back to Ithaca is one of the most celebrated tales in Greek mythology, it is also one of the most tragic. He may return to his kingdom, but the kingdom he returns to is not the same as the one he left. The Trojan War has changed him, as it has changed all of them. The victory over Troy may have been great, but the cost of that victory is written in every wave that pushes Odysseus further from his home. He is not just battling the seas or monsters. He is battling the ghosts of his own past, the memories of his actions, and the knowledge that the Trojan Horse will forever be a symbol of his victory and his moral ambiguity. Back in Troy, the story is one of mourning and sorrow. The once mighty city, which had stood for centuries, is no more. Its walls are reduced to rubble, and its proud people are either dead or enslaved. The destruction of Troy is not just the fall of a city. It is the death of an entire way of life. And while the Greeks return to their homes, carrying the riches and spoils of war, the Trojans are left with nothing but memories of a once glorious civilization. For the Trojan women, the aftermath of a war is especially brutal. They are taken captive, forced into slavery, or given as concubines to the Greek victors. Their lives, once full of promise and stability, are shattered. Among them is Andromache, the widow of Hector, whose grief is so profound it is almost palpable. She, like so many others, must now navigate the world as a victim of the war, a casualty of a conflict that she had no part in starting. For Andromache, as for the other women of Troy, the fall of the city marks the end of innocence, the loss of everything she held dear. But what of Helen? The woman whose beauty sparked the war now finds herself caught in the aftermath of the destruction she caused. The irony is impossible to ignore. Helen, once the most desired woman in the world, now returns to Menelaus, her husband, not as a triumphant heroine, but as a symbol of the war's futility. Historians have long debated the nature of Helen's return. Was it out of love, out of duty, or simply a resignation to the consequences of her actions? For Helen, the war has changed her as much as it has changed the world around her. She is no longer the beautiful and coveted woman who once lived in luxury. She is a symbol of destruction, a figure haunted by the bloodshed that her beauty unleashed. The story of the Trojan War and its aftermath is not just a tale of gods and heroes. It is a reflection of the complexities of human nature, of pride, vengeance, and the cost of ambition. The Trojan horse, that great symbol of strategy and deception, represents not just the end of Troy, but the moral price of war. It is a reminder that, in the pursuit of victory, we often lose sight of the very things that make us human. The Greeks may have triumphed, but their triumph is tainted by the means they used to achieve it. And the Trojans, for all their bravery and resilience, are undone not just by the Greeks, but by their own pride and belief in their invincibility. The legacy of the Trojan War and the Trojan horse lives on long after the battle is won. It is a story told and retold through the ages, not just as a myth of ancient Greece, but as a cautionary tale about the nature of power, deception, and human fallibility. For every victory, there's a cost. For every hero, there is a price. The Trojan horse, as much as it is a symbol of brilliance and victory, is also a symbol of the darker side of human nature, the ability to deceive, to manipulate, and to justify the unjustifiable in the name of a greater good. And so, as the Greeks sail home, leaving the ruins of Troy behind, the story of the Trojan horse is far from over. It endures as a reminder that, in the end, even the most clever plans come with consequences. Even the greatest victories are hollow when achieved at such a high price. The Trojan horse is a symbol of triumph. Yes, but it is also a symbol of the price we pay for that triumph. The fall of Troy, and the Trojan horse that made it possible, is a timeless tale of victory and loss, a reminder of the complex, often painful, path that leads us to the future. As the echoes of the Trojan War fade into the annals of history, the lasting lessons of the Trojan horse remain with us. What began as a clever trick by the Greeks has become a story that transcends time, offering timeless insights into human nature, ambition, pride, and the devastating effects of deception. The fall of Troy, brought about by a ruse that seemed too simple to fail, is not just the story of a city's destruction. It is a cautionary tale about the fragility of civilizations, the consequences of unchecked pride, and the dark side of cleverness. For the Greeks, the journey home is filled with the weight of their actions. The Trojan horse, once a symbol of their victory, is now a reminder of the high cost of that victory. The Greeks may have won the war, but they have lost something far more precious: their innocence. Odysseus, the man whose cleverness brought Troy to its knees, finds that his journey back to Ithaca is no simple homecoming. The gods, ever present in the lives of mortals, continue to test him, reminding him that no amount of intellect or strength can escape the consequences of one's choices. The Trojan horse, for all its brilliance, is a symbol of a darker reality, that even the most cunning of strategies can lead to a bitter price. As Odysseus sails from island to island, enduring the trials placed before him by the gods, he is confronted with the truth that victory, no matter how hard-earned, does not always bring peace. The war, the destruction, and the moral compromises he made during the Trojan conflict are never far behind. Odysseus may reach Ithaca, but the scars of Troy will remain with him, as they will remain with all who fought there. His homecoming is not just a physical return, but an emotional reckoning, a moment of facing what he has lost and what he has become. The Trojan horse itself, in all its deceptive glory, serves as a metaphor for the entire conflict. It represents the false promise of an easy victory, the illusion of peace through trickery. For the Trojans, it was a symbol of hope, a hope that peace was at hand, that the Greeks had given up and left behind a gift. But in the end, it was nothing more than a tool of destruction, an instrument of betrayal that marked the beginning of the end for Troy. The city that had stood proud for centuries was brought to its knees by a simple ruse, a reminder that no civilization, no matter how powerful, is invulnerable to the forces of deception. The women of Troy, too, bear the scars of war. Their fates are sealed not by the gods, but by the choices made by the men around them. Helen, who once lived a life of luxury and beauty, finds herself in the aftermath of the war, caught between the consequences of her actions and the love of her husband, Menelaus. Her return to him is an ironic twist of fate. She is now a symbol of the war's futility, the woman whose beauty ignited a conflict that cost thousands of lives. Her story, like the Trojan Horse, is a reminder of how easily beauty, pride, and desire can be manipulated to serve darker purposes. Helen may return to Menelaus, but neither she nor he can ever forget the destruction that followed in her wake. And then there are the other Trojan women, whose lives are irreparably shattered by the war. Andromache, the widow of Hector, is forced to live with the knowledge that her husband died fighting for a city that is no more. She, along with countless other women, is taken as a slave, her life reduced to nothing more than a prize for the victors. The fall of Troy is not just the fall of a city, but the fall of a way of life, a destruction of everything that the Trojans held dear. The Trojan women, left in the ruins of their once great city, are forced to face a new life, one filled with uncertainty, pain, and loss. Their resilience in the face of such suffering becomes a symbol of survival, but it is a survival marked by profound trauma. The Trojan Horse, as much as it is a symbol of the Greeks' cleverness, becomes a symbol of something far darker, a symbol of betrayal, of how easily trust can be manipulated for destruction. It's a reminder that even the most innocent-seeming gifts can carry with them the seeds of disaster. The Trojans, too, are guilty of their own pride, their own failure to see through the deception. Their arrogance, their belief in their invulnerability ultimately seals their fate. They thought the Greeks had given up, that they had left a token of peace, but in the end, it was their trust in that peace that destroyed them. The fall of Troy and the story of the Trojan Horse are timeless because they reflect the complexities of the human condition. They remind us of the dangers of unchecked pride, of the consequences of manipulating others, and of the fragility of even the greatest empires. The Greeks may have won, but their victory was tainted by deception. The Trojans may have been defeated, but their downfall was the result of their own hubris. In the end, both sides paid a price for their actions, a price that echoes through history, reminding us that no one is ever truly immune from the consequences of their choices. As we reflect on the story of Troy, we are reminded that the Trojan Horse is not just a symbol of one particular war, but of all the wars throughout history, of all the battles fought over pride, over power, and over the false promises of peace. It is a story that transcends time, one that continues to resonate with us today. The Trojan Horse is a symbol of the complexity of human nature, of our ability to deceive and manipulate, and of the inevitable consequences that follow in the wake of our choices. It teaches us that victory, no matter how brilliant or hard won, is always tempered by the cost of the battle. As the legends of Troy and the Trojan Horse continue to be told, their lessons live on, reminding us that the price of war is never truly paid by the victors alone. The consequences of our actions are far-reaching, and sometimes the greatest cost is not the lives lost in battle, but the lives forever changed by the choices we make.